And now, stand-up community subscribers and listeners from around the globe, it's time to Stand Up with Pete Dominic, where we ask the important questions that impact you, your family, and your community. Such as, could I sell my aging high-mileage car if I've been using it to haul recyclables? And with the Baseball World Series now underway, how could I see more adorable video footage of drunken mascot fisticuffs? And now, the podcast host who would gladly sell all of his sports memorabilia if it means free edibles for everyone, Pete Dominic.
That's right, Pico. I could sell my complete set 1984 Topps set of baseball cards alone and get probably one edible, whatever it takes. Well, hello and welcome to episode 463 of Stand Up. It's a very special episode because the GOAT, the smartest guy I know, Dr. Aaron Carroll, joining me to talk about vaccinating kids and more. Had a great conversation with Aaron, and for the first time on the show, and this is always a huge deal, a United States Senator, Democrat from Oregon, Jeff Merkley, joins me, and we talked about several issues: plastic pollution, voting rights, filibuster, campaign finance, and so much more. And we had a great talk, and that was really cool, and it's a big deal for the show. So very excited about both my conversations and sharing them with you today and every day here on Stand Up. You know, I tweeted out this afternoon that it's been 2 years since SiriusXM dropped my channel, and me with it, didn't renew my contract in October, I should say, of 2019. And yet there are things I miss, of course. I miss a lot of the people. I miss some of the energy. I love people. I love being around people. I definitely miss the paycheck and all of the benefits that came along with it, the 401k with the match and the health care. That was really great security for my family that gave us a lot of comfort knowing that. I mean, that's certainly the thing I miss the most. I miss some of the energy around New York City. I miss the collaborations. I still have so much of that. It's different. It's different for everybody now. And now I work not on the 37th floor of a Midtown Manhattan skyrise, which definitely got old, and don't have to sit in the car and fight with traffic and be concerned about my own personal safety being in the car early in the morning, late at night, all different kinds of hours that I would go in and out of the city. What that did to my body. No, now I'm in my backyard shed, surrounded by my garden and critters everywhere, squirrels and groundhog, that bastard. I see him all the time. He taunts me while I'm in here doing the show. And my bird feeders now. And I've got bird feeders so close, most importantly, to my family, that I rarely miss a thing. And so I said in this tweet, this is the long version. Obviously, I didn't tweet all this. I just wrote, quit your job and get a shed. And I couldn't do it without you. So many of you believed in me more than I believed in myself. And I think it's a really hard thing to imagine, to leave your job. I mean, I got forced out, right? I mean, to just take that leap is so challenging. But I just think we're just so misled about what's important. And I still feel and want financial security for my family. That is important in the world that we live in, but I wish it weren't. And you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And that's kind of the mantra I live by. My girls are 14 and 16 years old. Ava's got 1 more year of high school. Julia will have 4 years of high school. Maybe she'll do something else. I don't know. But the idea that I get to be around them as much as I do has always been my priority. And now I'm living it. And someday I'm told by many of you that their wings are ready and they fly right out. But until that day, I'm here in the shed, and I'll be talking to you and with you every weekday on Stand Up. So thank you so much for supporting me and for allowing for me to do this type of work and be with my family the way I am, and work with you and through you and together as we try to figure all this out. I feel like that just became Catholic Mass. With you, through you, in you, in every... Ugh, yeesh, scaring me. But for all of you people who have gone through something similar ahead of me and have helped me and carried me in so many different ways, thank you, thank you, thank you. For all of you people who are dealing and struggling with similar issues right now, I'm here for you. We're here for you. This community is. And for those of you who are having different kinds of issues and challenges and concerns, we're here for you too. We've learned so much about each other here in the last 2 years, and I'm so excited to see where we go and how we grow and meet you all and hang out with you and continue this relationship indefinitely for as long as I possibly can, because I love doing it. And you guys are making this happen. I mean, could not do it without you guys. You guys have created this program and been able to sustain it so that we can get these great guests and learn from them every day. And that's exactly what's happening. We made an awesome show together. I mean, look at who we're getting on the show. It's been amazing. I mean, I just told my wife, I just interviewed a United States Senator. You know how many podcasts would love to get a United States Senator on their show, much less Dr. Aaron Carroll? I got them both today and every day. So I just wanted to say, again, it's been awesome. I'm feeling really good, very purpose-driven, loving the work. And thank you. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, it's so good to be in your life and hopefully a positive force with you here every day, answering questions, having a little fun, sharing ideas, talking it over and out, and trying to better understand how to make your way through each day and your life. That's what we're doing, as well as maybe organize and make some really great things happen and help folks out a lot. Certainly, I've been helped out, and I just feel so lucky to be doing this gig, and I'm loving it, just loving it. So thank you. If you're not already a subscriber, we'd love to have you join us in the community. We'll celebrate tonight. We'll celebrate 2 years. How about that? And you know what? If you want to wear a costume, I forgot. Somebody asked, who was it? Barry Hummel? You want to wear a costume to tonight's hangout? Sure. Go ahead. I like that. I'll wear a little costume. I'll have some wigs or something. Tonight at 8 East, if you are a subscriber, you'll get an email with a link, a Zoom link, and you can join us. Probably be by the bonfire again. I liked that so much last Friday when we hung out. A couple drinks, and it'll be great. So maybe we'll have a costume contest or something. I don't know. Join us tonight at the Hangout and be a subscriber, be a member of our community. So many new friends, too. That's the best thing. So many new, legitimate, authentic friends and amazing relationships with people in my life. Okay. Well, now that sweetness is over, let's get to the bitterness that is the fight in Washington, D.C. and around the country and the world over, I guess, everything. We fight over over everything, it would seem. We're divided over whether or not apparently parents should be able to threaten teachers and administrators and volunteers in the Board of Education. That was and has been the controversy ever since the Board of Education Association sent a letter to the Department of Justice and said, hey, could you look into this and keep an eye on us? Because all of us are getting threats and there's already been violence. And so the Department of Justice, led by Merrick Garland, was like, okay, we'll sign some FBI agents and we'll watch and make sure that if people are threatening you, I mean, people can go up and say all kinds of crazy things about spoons sticking to them and the doctors are demons and everybody on the board is eating babies or something. I mean, that shit's crazy, and I think it's scary that people believe those things for sure. But that's different than expressing your mind about anything legitimately, even if you're yelling at the board. That's much different than saying, I know where you live, and sending them threats and actually carrying out violence, which is a fair and legitimate concern. But don't let that stop Republican senators who today had Merrick Garland, the attorney general, there to ask questions. And they mostly did stick to this issue about school boards and that the Department of Justice and FBI hunting down and demonizing parents. Because, white people, by the way, can never be terrorists. I think we've established that, right? We cannot be terrorists. We cannot be seen as terrorists. We're the whites. We are the whites. We're not terrorists. Timothy McVeigh was just disturbed. All right, sorry. Let me read from the New York Times. Katie Brenner, their justice correspondent, does great work there. She writes, at issue was a memo that Mr. Garland issued on October 4th directing the FBI and the 94 U.S. attorneys' offices to meet with local law enforcement agencies by early November to discuss how to address the threats and to be open dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting, assessment, and response. The Attorney General said in his memo that there had been, quote, disturbing spike in harassment, and intimidation, and threats against public school employees and board members. He said, while spirited debate about policy matters is protected under our Constitution, That protection does not extend to threats of violence or efforts to intimidate individuals based on their views. And now I got several clips from several senators to play for you during this hearing yesterday. But let's start with Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, who tries to lay out with some context what is at issue here.
The October 4th memo reads, in recent months, there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school administrators, board members, teachers, and staff who participate in the vital work of running our nation's public schools. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
I mean, it is true.
It is true.
I have a list of very disturbing incidents. In Texas, a parent physically assaulted a teacher. August 18th, 2021. In Pennsylvania, a person posted threats in social media which required police to station outside of a school district. Law enforcement investigating the person. I could keep going. Ohio, a school board member was threatening a letter that began with, "We are coming from you." Domestic terrorism in the United States, sir, has it been more from overseas radical terrorists since 9/11 or more from homegrown terrorists, most of them being right-wing extremists? Which has been greater since 9/11?
I want to be careful about that. The threats that we face with respect to terrorism, and none of those descriptions have to do with terrorism, but the threats that we face in the United States come both from foreign terrorists.
A church in South Carolina, a synagogue in Pennsylvania, a school, Parkland, a school, Newtown. Has there been threats and violence against schools in the United States of America?
There have been, yes.
Coming from what types of groups?
Well, they come from domestic groups.
From domestic groups.
Yes.
Has there been a long, pages-long list of what my staff could grab, been threats and violence against school officials in the United States of America in the last year?
I obviously haven't seen the list, but it accords with my recollections.
Well, let me accord your recollection with the letter that I've heard so much about that I pulled it to read it. You say literally, spirited debate about policy matters is protected under the Constitution. I'm quoting one of my colleagues today. Does that sound like harassing and intimidating moms and dads? You affirm at the top of your letter that spirited debate is allowed.
All right, there you go. That is Senator Cory Booker, who later on forgot what state Senator Ben Sasse is from. And this was a horrible moment for Cory Booker. Really rough stuff. And I'm going to make you listen to it because it's well, here it is.
Which I'll ask in writing to you. I want to be respectful of my colleague, my friend, the senator from the great state of Oklahoma.
Ouch.
I'm sorry, sir. Forgive me, Omaha.
Omaha's not a state, brother.
I'm sorry. Where are you from, sir?
We used to be able to beat Stanford in football, and we will return. Chairwoman, thank you. Sorry, Cory's not as funny as I thought he would be there.
I mean, that is rough stuff, huh? Omaha, Nebraska. At least he got the city was... that was tough. Tough. Okay, well, let's go to Senator Tom Cotton, who was just irascible. Yeah, I used the word.
By the First Amendment to protest to their school board about this.
But he was cited by the School Board Association as a domestic terrorist, which we now know that letter and those reports were the basis for your...
Senator, that's wrong.
Shameful. Judge, this is shameful. This testimony, your directive, your performance is shameful.
Okay. That's not correct.
Thank God you are not on the Supreme Court. You should resign in disgrace, Judge.
Awkward.
General Garland, do you want to complete your answer on?
Okay, I wasn't sure there was a question there, but let me be clear. The news reports I'm talking about were not the news reports in that letter. They were other news reports that everybody here has heard about, subsequent reports that everybody has heard about. There is nothing in this memorandum, and I wish if senators were concerned about this, they would quote my words. This memorandum is not about parents being able to object in their school boards. They are protected by the First Amendment. As long as there are no threats of violence, they are completely protected. So parents can object to their school boards about curriculum, about the treatment of their children, about school policies. All of that is 100% protected by the First Amendment, and there is nothing in this memorandum contrary to that. We are only trying to prevent violence against school officials.
All right. Does that sound fair to you? What do you think of this whole scenario? Here is the ranking member, the chairman, Dick Durbin, with a reminder to his colleagues.
I wish my colleagues would reflect for a single moment as to why that memo is important, not just for school board members, but to send a message across America that there's a line we're going to draw when it comes to political expression. When you say words, when you wave your arms, that's all protected. But when you threaten someone with violence or engage in acts of violence, that is never going to be protected and shouldn't be. It isn't that long ago that Gabby Giffords, one of our colleagues in the House, was gunned down in Arizona.
All right, now here's a senator from Hawaii who's been on this program, Senator Mazie Hirono, never pulling her punches. And in this soundbite, she's just trying to set up some perspective about what's really important. Not these manufactured, completely made-up things about teaching CRT in schools and all the rest of this bullshit. Here she is.
You know, what is a real problem is the fact that we have 530 voter suppression bills that have been introduced in 47 states, the vast majority by Republican legislatures, and people's votes are literally being stolen through these voter suppression actions. And do we hear word one about the fact that this is happening all across our country, that voter suppression, stealing of votes is happening? Does a single Republican even care about that? No. So let's let that sink in.
Yes, let's let it sink in. Well stated and great perspective from the senator from Hawaii. But let's go back to the senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton, because this is really an important issue that he thinks the FBI should investigate. This is the major epidemic of people following senators into restrooms and asking them questions.
Have you started an investigation into the harassment of Senator Kyrsten Sinema in a bathroom because she won't go along with the Democratic Party's big tax and spend agenda? That is a sitting United States senator being harassed in a bathroom.
I don't know whether the senator has referred the matter to the Justice Department or not.
I mean, Merrick Garland has no idea what to say there, of course. Then I think Tom Cotton got up and stormed out in a huff. He's like, I am out of here. I don't like your answers to my questions. I'm Tom Cotton. I'm angry. So now here is Mike Lee. He's a Republican senator from Utah. He disputes that there's a problem. Says he, like Cory Booker, did his research and he didn't hear about anybody saying anything terrible or threatening to anybody. Everything's fine.
My staff and I went through every news source raised by the National School Board Association. There was no explicit death threat. And I choose here to reiterate my concern that not every outburst or expression of concern by neighbors, among neighbors at a local school board meeting warrants a federal investigation. Certainly doesn't warrant the involvement of 94 U.S. attorneys in a way that threatens, intimidates, and tends inevitably to chill First Amendment activity.
Oh, it's to chill First Amendment activity. That's what the Department of Justice is coordinating with local law enforcement about. Right. Well, it's not working, and it's never going to. I mean, people are going to continue to go to these BOE meetings in my town and every other town and say whatever they want, and that'll be that. Eventually, maybe they'll run for the board, and then they'll realize what it's like to have to volunteer and be threatened by people that live in your community, that are your neighbors and maybe even at one point friends. Here's Senator Tom Cornyn of Texas echoing the same sentiment. Oh, it's so chilling to speech.
Did you consider the chilling effect that this sort of threat of federal prosecution would have on parents' exercise of their constitutional rights to be involved in their children's education?
Don't believe it's reasonable to read this memorandum as chilling anyone's rights. It's about threats of violence, and it expressly recognizes the constitutional right to make arguments about your children's education.
Yes, and that's why I have spoken twice in the last, I think, month, and I have no fear about speaking at my mind at these meetings. My fear is from my community members, if anything at all, and not from the people, the teachers and the administrators and the volunteers on the board. All right, and I think it was Marsha Blackburn that really took the cake with this comment, because because, of course, Merrick Garland was the federal prosecuted, investigated the Oklahoma City bombing and Timothy McVeigh. So this one cut pretty deep.
I just have to ask you, knowing that you really helped bring to justice those that caused the Oklahoma City bombing, would you really honestly put parents in the same category as a Terry Nichols or a Timothy McVeigh?
My God, absolutely not.
Then why would you ever release a memo? I mean, did you write that memo? Did staff write that memo? What would have led you to do this? It is so over the top.
I mean, her line of questioning is what's over the top. The entire performances that we just heard from Republican senators were over the top. This, to me, and I'm always skeptical of Department of Justice and of the federal government, like anybody should be. Certainly their history of surveillance on most recently Muslims and before that leftists and the civil rights movement and all that. I mean, they're notorious bad. I mean, with all of that history considered, I see what's happening in several towns across this country, and I am deeply concerned about it. And I'm happy that the FBI is working with local law enforcement, which I'm more worried about the local law enforcement supporting these people and being these people to some extent in our town. I don't know if any cops have been showing up at our BOE meeting. I don't think they have. They stay out of it publicly, at least. There's some analysis between Anderson Cooper and Jeffrey Toobin on CNN last night I found for you. Still no word on where Jeffrey... Is Jeffrey Toobin legally... Does he have to keep his hands in the picture at all times so you know he's not whacking it?
What does it say that Grassley is suggesting the Justice Department is politicized when the former president, whom Grassley is clinging to for re-election, tried 9 times to get his Justice Department to undermine the election, according to this committee's report?
Well, this is sort of the fantasy world in which we live. But, you know, Anderson, it's really important to remember why we are talking about school boards at all. Because it's about white supremacy, and that's on the rise in the Republican Party. The reason school boards are controversial is that some school boards have dared to teach that, you know, civil rights and African-American rights have not been so great in this country over the centuries, like when we had slavery and when we had Jim Crow. And that has so outraged the Republican Party telling the truth about race in America that they feel the way to win elections and to win the governorship in Virginia is to demonize these school boards for daring to tell the truth about race in America. And that's really the core of what's going on here. And that's even more chilling in a way than the posturing that went on today in the Senate.
I love that analysis. I fully agree with it. I think he articulated it perfectly, which is why I wanted to play that creep, Jeffrey Toobin, because I liked his analysis there. All right, there's a lot more to be said about those hearings, and there's a lot more, unfortunately, coming our way. Get involved with your local Board of Education, or maybe run for the board. Definitely get involved with organizations of parents. Organize your own if you haven't heard of any. Hopefully there is something that want to see diversity, equity, and inclusion programming in your district. Now let me turn to this other scary situation we see unfolding on the right. Here is Charlie Kirk. He's he's at Turning Point USA, this conservative Republican conspiracy racist organization. He's horrible. You probably know who he is. You may not know that he brought like 80 buses to January 6th. He sponsored. I mean, he was one of the promoters of it all. Anyway, he was out at Boise State University Monday. You may have heard this already, but if you haven't, I want to share it still as part of his quote, exposing critical racism tour. It all ties in to what I'm talking about, what we've been talking about. He about an hour and 10 minutes in an event, he was asked by one of the audience members, well, this.
You're brave. You're brave for what you say and the fact that you stand up there and say it, and I appreciate it. I think we all appreciate it, actually, because there's not a lot of people that have the balls to do it. But I want to ask you something a little bit out of the ordinary. So prepare yourself. At this point, we're living under corporate and medical fascism. This is tyranny. When do we get to use the guns? No, and I'm not, that's not a joke. I'm not saying it like that. I mean, literally, where's the line? How many elections are they going to steal before we kill these people?
So, no, no, hold on. No, stop. Hold on. Now, I'm going to denounce that. I'm going to tell you why. Because you're playing into all their plans, and they're trying to make you do this. That's okay. Just hear me out. You started with a compliment, so at least give me a little bit. They are trying to provoke you and everyone here. They are trying to make you do something that will be violent, that will justify a takeover of your freedoms and liberties, the likes of which we have never seen. We are close to have, hold on, we are close to have momentum to be able to get this country back on a trajectory using the peaceful means that we have at us. So to answer your question, and I just think it's, overly blunt, we have to be the ones that do not play into the violent aims and ambitions of the other side. They fear, let me say this very clearly, they fear us holding the line with self-control and discipline, taking over school board meetings. They're the ones that are willing to use federal force against us. And I know that people get fired up. We are living under fascism. We are living under this tyranny. But if you think for a second that they're not wanting you to all of a sudden get that next level where they're going to say, okay, we need Patriot Act 2.0. If you think that, Waco is bad, wait till you see what they want to do next. What I'm saying is that we have a very fragile balance right now at our current time where we must exhaust every single peaceful mean possible.
There is so much to say about that and so many different ways to take it, but it does seem like the consensus reaction to that is Charlie Kirk didn't say, now that killing people is always bad. I don't know. I don't know what you heard there and what you think, but we'll talk about it at the Hangout tonight for sure. One of the toughest questioners in all of media, the great Mehdi Hasan, he was on MSNBC, had Joe Lieberman, the former senator from Connecticut, who did, I think, a lot of bad things in his time in the Senate, but probably, sinking the public option and Obamacare, of course, and all kinds of other things he did to healthcare, to endorsing, authorizing the war in Iraq. Mehdi Hasan puts him right there on the spot like very few others do. Take it away, sir.
Have you shifted on the Iraq war? Before I let you go, I got to ask you about Iraq. We just saw the 20th anniversary of 9/11, the end of the Afghan war. You have someone like Chris Murphy now representing Connecticut that you sat in for the Senate. He's very critical of the Iraq war. Have you disowned it? As recently as 2015, 2016, you were still saying you thought it was a good thing overall. It was a disaster. Are you willing to say tonight it was a disaster, you were wrong, you regret it, you apologize?
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm not. I mean, look, I was in the majority of members of the Senate Democratic Caucus who voted to authorize President Bush to go to war in Iraq to get rid of Saddam Hussein. After the war, after Saddam went into hiding until we caught him, the Bush administration made some big mistakes. And that went to the whole way in which they handled the Iraqi military, the Iraqi government. But my point of contention with a bunch of my fellow Democrats who turned against the war then was that we can't just cut funding for our troops in battle, which is what a couple of Democrats tried to do, and I was the decisive vote against. But come on, it was. And we can't leave this battlefield in defeat because it'll until we stabilize the country. And frankly, we did. That actually happened. But hold on. I have to ask this. We're out of time, but I have to jump in here. Thousands of Iraqis died, innocent men, women, children, civilians, in U.S. airstrikes, in massacres, in places like Haditha, Mahmudiyah, Balad. I asked John Bolton this same question almost exactly a year ago on the show. Does none of that bother you? Doesn't affect your conscience? Doesn't keep you up at night? The sheer level of suffering that we caused in Iraq? Yeah, but of course it does. But the truth is that the people of Iraq were suffering terribly under Saddam Hussein, and so were the people of the region. I think the world is safer, as your headline up there from an earlier statement of mine, without him there. The cost of the war, both in lives and in money, American money, was way beyond what I ever anticipated. So I suppose if you could have foreseen that, I might have felt differently about it, but I'm not going to go back and try to correct.
I would hope that if you had foreseen thousands of deaths, you would have thought differently about it. We'll have to leave it there.
All right. I love that. I really liked it a lot. I reached out to him and let him know how much I like that. So important that all of those people responsible are at least asked that question, that line of questioning that Mehdi Hasan just did. All right. To wrap it all up for us now, I want to just play for you. I think this commentary from our friend Wajid Ali kind of does a good job wrapping up everything else we heard, except for that last clip with Mehdi Hasan and Joe Lieberman. But all the other clips that we heard in today's last 24 news segment here. Here's Wajid Ali with Aisha Mills on Black News Channel. I really like this.
I think this is where we're at. I am not God. I don't know what's in people's minds. I'm not Ben Carson. I don't know what's in their hearts. But I see them based on their behavior and their actions. And what I've seen is that the mainstream conservative movement and elected officials now have embraced the conspiracy theories, QAnon, deep state, replacement theory, Trump. So it doesn't matter that they might not believe this. Based on their actions, I judge them. And so DeSantis is a smart man. He's an educated man. He is vaccinated. Mm-hmm. His family is safe. I guarantee you that all these Republicans are safe and vaccinated, just like Donald Trump. But they realize now this is the base. This is where the party is headed. And in order for me to fuel the base, along with disinformation and voter suppression and gerrymandering and white supremacy, riled on by this racial anxiety and CRT, I can win votes. And so I'll go all in on this and tell them that I am defending your liberty from this deep state featuring Wajahat Ali, Joe Biden, Aisha Moody Mills, that wants to make your child into a homosexual, transgender person who attacks pronouns and wears skirts and reads Toni Morrison and smokes weed and snorts cocaine off of a stripper's belly. I'm protecting you from that. And that actually animates the suburban voters with white rage and white anxiety. And we're going to see the test about the test right now is right here in Virginia, right where I am. Glenn Youngkin.
Yeah, well, I got to cut it off there, Waj. Sorry, but at least I got your voice on the show today. Always great. And pretty accurate commentary, in my opinion. I like that. I mean, I hated what he just said, but I think it was accurate. So I guess I liked it. All right, that's it for all of the audio clips. And now it's time to get to the rest of the headlines. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a brand new news dump jingle from Pete Coe. So let's listen.
Mountain biker on the trail sees a bear and jumps. The biker gets his kicks out on today's news dump.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he nailed it. Too easy, huh, Pete? That was awesome. That really happened. That's an actual news story. A guy got attacked by a bear on his bike. I mentioned it in the news dump last night and challenged Pete Coe to write a jingle about it. And look at that. He did. All right, let's see what we've got for you in the headlines today. Oh, this is good news, I guess. Starbucks announced yesterday that it's raising pay for U.S. workers, taking steps to improve working conditions, according to the Associated Press. All pay workers will make at least $15 an hour, average nearly $17 by summer 2022. Some pay increases will start before the summer, according to the Seattle-based coffee giant. Employees with 2 or more years of service will get a 5% raise in late January, and those with 5 or more years of employment could receive up to 10%. And more. Read about it at the USA Today. The company said it's raised pay 3 times now in the last 24 months. Well, this is big news. You might have seen the protests a couple days ago of New York City workers, especially cops and firefighters, over they didn't want to have to get the vaccine. They didn't want to have to take the jab, as they say. A New York judge on Wednesday refused to pause the vaccine mandate set to take effect this Friday for the city's municipal workforce, denying the police union's request for a temporary restraining order. The judge ruled that the city's COVID-19 vaccine mandate can take effect as scheduled, while also ordering city officials to appear in court November 12th to defend the requirement against the union lawsuit seeking to have it declared illegal, according to the Associated Press. CNN reported yesterday that cigarette sales ticked up for the first time in 2 decades. I guess the pandemic wasn't good for America's lungs in more ways than one. The increase was a nominal one, just 0.4%, but it marks a reversal in the downward trend we've been seeing since 2000. And that is from Newser.com. Former New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof has confirmed that he's going to run for governor in Oregon. I wish I'd known that before I sat down with the senator from Oregon. I might have asked him what he thought about it, but I don't know. Probably wouldn't want to waste time on that question anyway. But that's interesting. Like Al Gore and Sarah Palin before him, former New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof, moving from journalism to politics. He's been exploring a run for governor, formally announced Wednesday that he'll be entering the Democratic primary. And this one is going to give plenty of fodder for the right-wing media complex. U.S. has now issued its first passport with an X-gender designation, a milestone in the recognition of the rights of people who don't identify as male or female. Expects to be able to offer the option more broadly next year, the State Department said. U.S. Special Diplomatic Envoy for LGBTQ rights, Jessica Stern, called the move historic and celebratory, saying it brings the government documents in line with the lived reality that there's a wider spectrum of human sex characteristics than is reflected in the previous two designations. And read more about that just about everywhere. All right, let me slip in one fun and silly, ridiculous headline for you. A woman from New York is suing Kellogg's, the company Kellogg's, for $5 million because she says the company's Frosted Strawberry Pop-Tarts product doesn't have enough strawberries in its filling. What? The woman filed a class action lawsuit with a lawyer against Kellogg's for falsely advertising the contents of its pastry. Quote, strawberry representations are misleading because the product has less strawberries than consumers expect based on the labeling, lawsuit says. The amount of strawberry ingredients is insufficient not merely to provide the nutrient benefits of strawberries, but to provide a strawberry taste. And the lawsuit is asking for $5 million in damages, claiming that customers wouldn't have purchased the treats repeatedly had they known it had fewer strawberries than expected. I think this is a frivolous lawsuit. I think if you are so bad and stupid that you really believe that there's any strawberries in it, I mean, it is false advertising, I guess, but still, I don't know. Where are you on this one? That's another good one for us to talk about at the Hangout tonight. That's a fun one. Of course, the biggest headline last night at least seemed to be about whether or not there would be paid leave in the Build Back Better reconciliation bill, and I'm not really going to talk about that too much because we don't quite know where that's at right now. So finally, I just want to mention the last headline. Iran has agreed to restart negotiations over its nuclear program next month, according to their chief negotiator. Those talks in which Iran and the U.S. have engaged through intermediaries came as the Obama-era nuclear deal hangs by a thread amid warnings about Iran's nuclear advances since Iran halted talks in June. Unclear whether an agreement has been reached to resume talks when they will begin, whether Iran still has preconditions like sanctions relief, but their top negotiator said the exact date will be announced next week. And I say that is good news. In time to get my friend, pen pal, and longtime listener Steve Replagol on. Says time to get Robin Wright back on the show to talk about it. Good idea, Steve, and always great to hear from you, my friend. All right, that is your news dump for the 28th of October, and thank you for listening. Darcy Mercero, that's my cousin, and is like a big sister to me, who I've always looked up to, and she's listening in upstate New York, where we grew up, and doing amazing work all the time, telling me that she loves the news dump, and it's always there for her when she wakes up at like 6 in the morning. She says she likes to catch up on the world, but most of the news shows drop after 6 a.m., which is perfectly reasonable for most people, but it really works for her schedule. And then she says the way that you do the news is fairly perfect for me. It's a lot more in-depth, say, than NPR's Up First or any other 10, 15-minute news roundups. It covers more topics than something like The Daily or Post Reports. I like listening to clips and feeling a little more informed than I would be if I just heard the highlight reel from someone else. So I appreciate that, Darcy. Thank you very much. And now it's time to get to the guests, which, of course, is my favorite part of the show because I love talking to these brilliant people and asking them all the questions on my mind. Coming up for the first time ever, the United States Senator from Oregon. It's Jeff Merkley. But first, I've got now the Chief Health Officer at Indiana University. He is a pediatrician. He is a researcher. He is a YouTuber. He's won a journalism award, beating the Washington Post even for his YouTube channel, Healthcare Triage. You can read him at the Incidental Economist blog. You can read him at The Atlantic. We talked about both of his most recent pieces at The Atlantic. Also a contributor, of course, to the New York Times, because he's the smartest guy in the world. My favorite doctor, the Mythbuster himself, on Twitter at Aaron E. Carroll. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome him back to the show, Dr. Aaron Carroll. Do you want to see people or just talk to people? How do you think a conversation generally goes better, on the phone, or because I'm always wondering as I do these interviews or video chat?
I'm the worst on the phone speaker of all time. I would so much rather talk to someone on Zoom than on the phone.
Oh, you would? What, do you feel more comfortable?
I am terrible. So one of my real problems is that on the phone, I tend to interrupt constantly. I don't know if it's that I can't read cues or if I'm just too damn impatient, but I'm not nearly, and I could be much better at this on Zoom too, don't get me wrong. But on the phone, I feel like I don't let people finish their thought. And so it's terrible. It's a bad thing, and I'm constantly working on it, but I hate talking on the phone. But in Zoom, at least I can read the cues and sort of, at least it's giving me the feedback of like, no, not yet. You can't talk yet. And I'm better about that. Plus, I just am too easily distracted, I think, on the phone. I'll be doing 12 things and I can focus more when we're doing this if I see you on Zoom.
God, that was hard not to interrupt.
Yeah. Well, it's like I'm not going to check my email while I'm doing this. I could easily check my email while I'm talking to you on the phone or text or anything.
That's right. You've made I feel like you've said that you're really good at multitasking, but I feel like the science says nobody is.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I mean, well, again, of course, the science is, going to give you more of the average than any individual. But I don't know. I'm pretty good at getting work done while I do other things, but could I be massively more productive if I completely change the way that I work? Maybe, but it served me well.
This observation of mine is because I was once in your office and you had like 12 screens, and one of them was playing a television show, Green Gables. Oh
my God, was I watching Anne of Green Gables while I worked? That I didn't even know I did that, but I watch TV or videos all the time while I'm working. Yeah.
That's crazy.
But that's even like since I was.
But it's especially because
I was a kid.
The type of work you're doing is very analytical. It's a lot of research, reading, writing, and like it's not like you're doing Legos or something, which you probably also do in addition.
No, to be honest, one of the reasons I love doing Legos is it's almost like a form of meditation for me. It forces me to focus on that one and one thing only, which is so rare for me because I feel like I'm too often doing too many things at the same time. So that's actually one of the things I love about doing Legos. But I even talked to my parents about this years ago, where they were like, this seemed like a bad idea, like watching TV while you study, but it always seemed to work. So, what are you going to do? They let it go.
That's interesting. You're on one end of the spectrum with that, obviously, is what you're saying.
I'm not advocating it for everybody.
Right.
No.
Speaking of advocating something for everybody, I wanted to ask you, because yesterday I was telling you this before I hit record, we had comedian, former host of Ask Me Another, Ophir Eisenberg, talking openly and vulnerably about her struggle with depression and how she's resisted taking any kind of pharmaceutical drugs forever. And now she's considering it, but she's still... so I wanted, there's a lot of information that happened. I don't know what I'm talking about, and she admittedly doesn't know what she's talking about. So I just wanted to maybe kind of do a little bit of a science fact check or get your thoughts on our, brain science. We still don't know as much about how the brain works as the heart or anything else, right? Fair to say, much less how to treat it.
Yeah, that seems pretty fair. I think we know more than we used to.
Sure.
And I think that there's lots of people that seem to have benefited from antidepressants or, anti-anxiety meds. I get why people are resistant. I mean, one, it seems like you're tinkering with the brain and people don't love the idea. I also think that, some of the stuff that some people see as a benefit, other people see as like a downside, whatever it is, they worry that it's going to change their brain chemistry in some way that changes a person. I get it, but it's like one of those things where I've never really felt that way. And so I hear people and I understand their concerns. I'm just not sure that I get them totally.
What about?
Because look, yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I demand it.
It's the other generalization I hear a lot, and I thought was fairly accurate in terms of the consensus among experts, is that yes, everything you just said is true. They can really help people and change their lives. And sometimes people say, I can't believe I've been resisting taking these for so long, and so on, all these great scenarios. But that it's also true that they are overprescribed. Is that another fair general idea or no?
Probably. But I think it's like, it's funny because it's like, I think change their lives is such a big thing. And I come back to who was it that wrote that book? We've talked about it before, the meditation book, which is like 10% better. Was it
Dan Harris? Dan
Harris, right? Like, because that 10%, like that's the way I feel about all of this stuff. Right. It's like, I'm not looking for a miracle. I'm looking for some help. And I love that book because it was the whole idea of like, I'm not saying meditation is going to 180 your life. It'll make 10% better. I feel that way about, medications, which are going to help for anxiety or depression. I never would have an expectation that I'm going to go from like, well, I'm depressed to like, wow, it's awesome. But 10% better. Like, if it takes the edge off, if it, helps you to make that next step, that would be a major success. Maybe we're expecting too much.
Okay. Well, I could talk about that one with you for obviously forever. And I always appreciate your insight on the best research on anything. So let's talk about
not just research. I mean, I'd say just that's experience. It's just, I just don't think that like, nothing of what I've dealt with in mental health, whether it be therapy, whether it be medicate, whatever it is, it's like nothing like, radically changes everything overnight or, goes from like, I was depressed to like, now I feel like $1 million. It's just, everything is slow, steady progress, hopefully towards something that is better. But marginally, not overwhelmingly.
Luckily, I have you in my life and I know of your work and know you personally so well. And so I trust you so much. But, what do you say to right now people who say I did my research on blank? Specifically, I read a study or an article about a study, because my feeling is still I think you need a degree to read a study. And I think you also it helps to have an actual degree or go to college because you understand exactly how funding studies works. And I think that's really important. Watching the NIH be criticized, I'm fine with the NIH or anything being criticized, but demonized is like it becoming a binary thing like everything else in our lives. What do you say about people who do their own research and want to, find out the truth?
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of things. The first is that you're right in that all research is not the same. Some research is better than others, and understanding the nuances and the limitations of certain types of studies and research is important, because you can't just say like, I found a study, because like a really crappy, case control study is not the same as a big randomized controlled trial. They're just not the same. But I would also say that part of the problem is that what you just said also is that like people said like, I read a study. And I mean, I feel like, probably the biggest theme of, all the writing I've done on research in the last decade is that it's not a study with very, very few exceptions. It's not like one study defines or overturns everything that's gone before. It's all of it together, because no one study is almost ever definitive. And that's what I think people often do is they find the study that supports their belief. And then they're like, here, but that's cherry picked. So it's not that I think you need to be an expert. It's just that like, it's my job, or at least part of it is, or like I go out and find all the studies or as many as I can to try to explain what something is, how to think about something or understand it. Not here's one study and that's how you do it. And even when I would write columns regularly for the Upshot, I'd be like, here's a new study, but let's place that in context of all the stuff that's come before and then talk about how this might change the enormous amount of work that we already have. Not like, okay, here's one study. That's all you need to know. Go away with it. The best example of this, and the one that I come back to all the time, is there was a study in the Journal of, I want to say, Clinical Nutrition almost a decade ago, I think, where researchers took a cookbook. If I remember correctly, it was like the the joy of cooking, and they randomly chose 50 ingredients from the index. And then they basically went to the literature and looked up all the studies they could find on whether these ingredients caused or prevented cancer. Are they good or bad? And for almost all the ingredients, they found at least one study. There were like 270 some studies overall, and they put it on this nice chart. Basically, what they showed was that for any ingredient that you could pick almost, there were studies showing that it prevented cancer and studies showing that it caused cancer.
Wow.
So coffee or, salt or, I don't know, pick a spice, whatever it is, you could find a study that says this will cure cancer or this will cause cancer. And of course, if you're going to cherry pick, that's what people do. They go, oh, onions cure cancer, onion extract. Everybody needs it to be on it. I can find a study that shows onions cause cancer too. What we should take from that is that, this stuff probably doesn't make much of a difference at all. It's like, it all averages out towards the middle. We really can't say much at all. But if you cherry pick, you can choose a study to do it. So people can say, I did my research. I found a study. I read it. I found the truth. It's not just finding the one study. It's trying to get a comprehensive view of all of it. And that takes time and effort that most people aren't willing to do.
I want to talk about the conversation surrounding in the communication, which you're also an expert about, scientific communication, surrounding the cost benefit analysis of this vaccine or any other vaccine. And as you know, Val had just recovered from a breakthrough case of COVID, and talking to her, living with her, watching her deal with it was really interesting to be so intimate with someone. But when she lost her sense of smell and taste, she also lost almost a will to live. I've never, ever seen her like this. And so my point to you is we so often talk about the risk being death. And I think we need to talk about all of the long-term effects that we do and don't know and communicate those better. I mean, you do that really well, but overall, I feel like that's not what is being done well enough. But of course, that's just my read of it. What am I made a decent point?
Yeah, I mean, I say this all the time in webinars. Is like, the focusing only on death misses a whole host of horrible outcomes. First of all, even just being hospitalized is terrible. But again, losing your sense of taste and smell sucks. Like that would make me miserable. I like to eat. I like the taste of stuff. That's one of the things that brings me joy. If you took that away, it'd be massively impactful on my life. And, but so there's lots of stuff in between that is a major consequence for people and affects their quality of life other than death. And the only way not to get that, of course, is to prevent cases of COVID. It's not like you can treat your way out of not losing your sense of taste or smell. And even most of the treatments we have are still just trying to prevent death, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Want to prevent death. But, only focusing on death misses so much of the picture. But I'm also struck. I hate the term breakthrough case. I just do. Like, we don't say this about any other disease. Like when people get the flu, we don't go crazy about breakthrough cases of flu. We just get our flu shot every year and we move on. Whenever there's a measles outbreak, some number of people who are vaccinated get measles. Most of the cases are unvaccinated. That's how the outbreaks start. But we don't go crazy about like, oh my God, it's a breakthrough case. No, nothing is, it's just a boost. Vaccines boost your immune system massively. Don't let me minimize that. But it's not 100%, and cases are going to occur. It's just that the cases tend to also be much less serious and much less dangerous. And also, you're much less likely to get it. But our obsession with this word breakthrough makes it sound like it's a failure every time. But it's, we expected that from day one. Everybody did. It's going to occur. The numbers are not more than we would have expected. And, that's just part of the whole process.
Is there a better way to communicate it?
I just wish we never used the word. Like we just said, yes, these vaccines are not 100% effective. Some people will still get infected. We expect that. Cases will happen, period. Some people will get COVID. In the same way I would talk about flu back in the day. I'd say, you're much less likely to get the flu. And if you do, are one of the rare cases where you do get flu, it's much less likely to be dangerous. That's the same thing with COVID. We never used the word breakthrough before.
Right.
And tallied them so that they were in the news every day so that people would get panicked that the vaccine's not working.
I want to talk about your two most recent articles at the Atlantic magazine, the most prestigious magazine in America, and you're writing for them. Go ahead, vaccinate the kids was your piece back in September?
Pete, I hate to do this. The dog is scratching and is going to poop. Can I go let him out real fast?
I want there to be poop there and it'd be my fault.
I will be right back. Holy crap. Son of a bitch didn't want to poop. He just wanted to lay in the sunroom.
I was going to say, won't he come back, scratch to also come back in?
Well, I didn't let him out. I opened the door to the sunroom and he just got up on the sofa and he was like, fuck you, man. I just wanted to lay in the sun.
How do you let your dog out to poop or to pee? Because you don't have
so like first, usually we leave the door to the sunroom open all day. So he just wanders in and out. And if he wants to, he scratches at the glass door to go outside. But today, for some reason, someone shut the sunroom doors. He was scratching at that. I assumed he wanted to go outside.
Let me be clear. How does your dog poo and pee?
He goes outside and poops and pees.
On his own?
Yeah.
Off a leash?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He would never leave.
So you're just like, it's not a concern that he would just take off?
Oh, Loki? Laziest dog in the world. He would never run away.
Really?
If we put him on a leash, the only way we can really take him for a walk is to drive a mile away, get out with him, and he will walk directly home. If you at any point try to walk away from the home, he will fight you to the death. If we left the house, he would take 3 steps out and be like, nope, motherfucker, I am walking out of here. Like, I live here. He only goes towards the home.
Is it weird that I am increasingly relating to him?
No, I totally get it. Right? He's just like, why would I walk away from this place? He'll go out in the yard. We had an electric fence, but we don't even bother with the collar anymore. He would never run away. He would never run away.
So, okay, back to these two articles.
Sorry. Yes.
Back in September, go ahead, vaccinate the kids. The risk of vaccinated children will never be zero, but the alternative is so much worse. And then your most recent article is really interesting. Many parents won't vaccinate their kids. Here's why, which is a real helpful explainer. I think the best question you answer, I think, in the first article is, listen, if you're paying attention, you know that it's not that dangerous for kids in terms of death, certainly, and that the real danger certainly is with older folks. And now that most older folks are vaccinated, why do we have to worry? And we should rethink the cost-benefit analysis for kids, seeing as that it's not zero. So why should we vaccinate the kids if the people who are most vulnerable have had their shot?
Well, one, kids still can have bad outcomes. Like, this has been worse than any flu that I can remember still. There's still like 700 plus kids that have died of COVID. Lots have gotten MISC. Lots have been hospitalized. Lots have gotten sick. It's a disease that affects kids. It's every reason we'd vaccinate them against flu. I'd vaccinate them against COVID. On top of that, though, it's, the only way we're ever going to get to like real herd immunity, or the idea that really we can prevent massive outbreaks, is we need a massive number of people to be vaccinated. Kids are a huge population. There's tens of millions of them. As long as they're out there as a well of infection, they're going to be a risk to others who are at higher risk. The immunocompromised, people with chronic conditions, and even the elderly, because they will still get cases, even though they are vaccinated and are much safer. It'll happen. No one wants to give it to their grandparent or their loved one with cancer or a friend with cancer, whatever it is. And when I think you weigh the benefits and the harms, asking kids to get, vaccinated to protect those they love is also a good thing. We're all part of the social contract here. And I would apply the same thing to kids that I would to everyone else. You don't just get vaccinated to protect yourself, although in this case, it also will protect them. You get vaccinated to protect those who can't protect themselves. It's part of what we do.
Increasingly, I would argue that there's a wide disagreement on what you and I think is the social contract.
We say that, but I think it's like one of those where it's in focus now and it's acute, but like this argument has been brought up with every vaccine. I mean, this is the whole argument when people are like with measles and they don't want to get the MMR. This was the argument against varicella, chickenpox when it came out. This is the argument all the time with every vaccine. And so there's always a vocal component that's like, I'm here in it for me and mine. But the vast, vast majority of people get vaccinated against all those other illnesses. We're screaming and yelling about COVID right now. But, again, these things are also marathons, not sprints. It took, decades to get where we needed to be with measles. It took 10 plus years to get where we needed to be with chickenpox. The idea that we're going to get there in COVID in a year was never in the cards, which, I've been arguing since the beginning. Mandates are the only way to get there, period. And mandates, it still aren't going to get there this fast. We're not going to see a change overnight.
Mandates work better at a chicken plant in Arkansas than they do at the New York Police Department. They work better at a school in New York than they might in Mississippi. What about a mandate right now for elementary school age students for the COVID vaccine, similar to all of the rest of the vaccines?
Well, I would think that it's probably a little hard to do it right away. I mean, there's a difference between like saying I think people should do it and then telling people they have to do it. We don't have, the hundreds of thousands or millions of doses yet to detect very rare complications or to sort of know the details. Like, I don't think anybody mandated them in the United States until like we knew like millions, if not, tens or hundreds of millions of people had taken them. We're not there yet with kids. So the idea that we'll mandate them out of the gate, I don't think anyone is. I think, in fact, even the ones that have made the news are mandates that would kick in once it's fully approved by the FDA. We're nowhere near that for kids yet. I mean, it just got EUA or it's about to. I think it's a little premature to start talking about mandates for kids.
I know you got to go. Just on the mix and match. Any concerns? I want to try a different smoothie.
Well, I would not probably mix and match and go towards Johnson & Johnson. It just seems like boostering with an mRNA vaccine is better. Having said that, if you've already had Johnson & Johnson and you wanted to keep going Johnson & Johnson, that seems totally reasonable.
Just to be clear,
no. I think honestly, the evidence is that any of these are going to be fine. Vaccines are great. Go ahead.
The mRNA vaccines are the Moderna and the Pfizer.
Right.
Mixing and matching.
I mean, it's like what limited data exists about mixing and matching would argue that getting boosted with one of those is likely a little bit better. But, again, if you just want to continue the one you've already got, that's totally fine. Go ahead.
All right. Well, a million more questions, but you have to go back to your actual job, which is taking care of your dog, apparently.
Evidently, Loki just came in, so who knows?
Loki, thank you very much, pal. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Dr. Aaron Carroll on Twitter at Aaron E. Carroll. Read him at The Atlantic. Read him at New York Times. Subscribe to his YouTube channel right now, Healthcare Triage, which is such a great resource for me and so many of you as well to help us make the best decisions for our health and consumption and so much more. Get his book, The Bad Food Bible, as well. All of his books. Forgot to mention those in the intro. Okay, now I'm very excited to bring to you for the first time on this program, and my first time ever talking to him. I've followed him and supported him for a really long time. He is one of the 2 U.S. senators from the great state of Oregon. He's born and raised in Oregon. He also served in the House there. He ran Habitat for Humanity there. He's on all kinds of committees. He was reelected in 2020. And I was really excited to talk to him because originally I'd reached out to him to talk about the anti-plastic bill that he has proposed, that he sponsored, which I think is really super important. But obviously there was a lot more. There's a lot more to talk about with any United States senator than just that. We covered a lot of ground, from voting rights to more. And then he had to go vote, but you'll hear that he came back actually like 5-10 minutes later, and we finished the interview. So that was pretty cool to have happen as well. And I can't get guests like this without your support. Please let him know that you heard him on the show. Tweet him at Sen Jeff Merkley and tell him how much you appreciate him joining me and taking my questions. That would be a really big deal to me. And certainly his communications people will see it, and it'll help us get more of these people on. So do your part. Please help me out. Send Jeff Merkley. Tweet him and let him know how much you appreciate him. Join me. Here we go with the senator from Oregon, Jeff Merkley. So we have him now, Senator Jeff Merkley, who is one of my favorites. He's the real deal. He is the change he wants to see and has been for years in Oregon. Very excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me, sir.
Oh, you're so welcome, Pete. Wonderful to be with you.
I do have to say here at the top, I am. There is some amount of shame with the fact that I've never visited your state. And my aunt, my dad's sister, who I'm close with, Julie Pimentel. Do you know Julie and Dan? They live outside Eugene. They've been begging me to go. Can you put the nail in the coffin and tell me why I need to come to Oregon, why anybody does?
Well, can you imagine how disruptive it would be to your life? Because you'll come to Oregon, you'll visit, and you'll never leave. And we will love having you join our state.
Well, that's what I hear. You know, sadly, the only, I guess, drawbacks are in Oregon and around the country are climate issues. You know, when I think of Oregon, I can't believe I think of this now. But when I think of the West and the Pacific Northwest, I do think of the wildfires. And I just wanted to get you to comment on, you know, the climate crisis as we are in it right now as it pertains to your state.
Oh, we see it firsthand. A few years ago, we had the red zone, which was a zone where if you fly over it, all you see is red dying trees as far as the eye can see. Why? Because it's warmer. And so the pine beetles were just having a field day and killing everything in sight. I was just up on the Pacific Crest Trail a couple of weeks ago, and there was a section I was on where every pine tree at about 3 to 4 feet off the ground had a big scar on it, and generally the tree was dead. It was still standing, was dead. They died long enough now that the forest is starting to grow back up through these dead trees, but it really reminds you of that. And then the forest fires. Longer, hotter fire season, and then the snowpack, which is gone too soon. And so it means our trout streams, our salmon streams are warmer and smaller, really bad, and that results in a lot of fish killed. And then there's the Pacific Ocean, which is acidifying so much that it is affecting the sea life. And we had this very strange phenomenon of a virus among the sea stars. And the result was they all died, all of them. And they ate the blue sea urchin, and the blue sea urchin eats the base of the kelp. So without the sea stars, the kelp forests are disappearing off the coast of Oregon, and they nurture all kinds of other species. Well, I could go on, but I think you get the idea. It's global warming is a catastrophe, and we're on the front line.
Given that portfolio of problems facing your state alone, how do your constituents, how do the citizens of Oregon, how do you message to them? I think people look at it sometimes as it's an issue to deal with down the road, or it's not as serious. But in Oregon, I mean, if you're just smelling that smoke, if you're dealing with any of those issues, much less all of those issues, you would think people would want to see action. How do you communicate it, and how do the people there think about it?
The key is to talk about the facts on the ground. When I first came to the Senate and started doing a town hall in every county, and I have all these very red rural counties, people were very skeptical about climate. The fossil fuel industry was putting out a lot of misinformation about it. And I was down at town hall in Southern Oregon, and someone stood up and said, "Wait, how can you really be serious about jobs when you're talking about climate? And they're not going to destroy our jobs." And I said, okay, here we are in Klamath County. How many folks here are familiar with the red zone, with the pine trees dying? And like everybody in the room raises their hand. I said, well, how many people here fish? And everybody raised their hands, because half actually fish and the other half didn't want to admit they don't fish. And I said, so you know that the trout streams are not, they're too warm. I mean, we're cold water fish world, and if the water's warm, it's a problem. And how many people are familiar with the algae in the nearby lakes? Oh, yeah, they all were. And the algae have two problems. One is they when they die, they strip the oxygen out of the lake, and they produce toxins that kill things. And so when I went through the list, I said, so, hey, listen, this is why I'm fighting on climate change, because it's affecting our farming, our forestry, and our fishing. And you all see the effects of it right here on the ground. And the room in this rural red county broke into applause. And it's like, you got to talk about the facts on the ground people know about, not some study about the oceans rising 100 years from now.
Well, so one of the main issue I wanted to get you on to talk about, because you're one of the co-sponsors of this bill in the Senate, is the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. I talked with Judith Enck of Beyond Plastic, who said you got to talk with Senator Merkley. And so this is a huge issue, but yet messaging this one, I don't know about you, but every time I talk about this, I get like people making fun of me. Like in the weirdest kind of way, like, oh, you care, oh, plastic, really? Like we don't have enough issues and you're going to talk about plastic. And I'm a comedian. Make any joke you want. I'm all for it. But I got to say, it hurts a little bit, Senator. I mean, this is a really serious, important issue. I laid out some of the statistics earlier. How do you message this one to get people to care? Because people really like to dismiss it.
So you're absolutely right that many people are unfamiliar with plastics being a big environmental problem. But they're starting to get the word because there's more and more articles. And some of those articles are about our marine life that is digesting plastic and dying, seals, fish, so on and so forth. So that's kind of like, oh man, I don't like to see the turtles all die because they're eating little pieces of plastic. And now there's more and more information out about microplastics, where the plastic's ground up or filaments that are put into our water and our streams from your washing machines, because we have plastic clothing called nylon clothing or acrylic clothing, and those microplastics end up, and it's now estimated between the water we drink and the food we eat, each of us, I'm going to reach for a credit card here, we consume this much plastic every week, each one of us. And this plastic is full of chemicals, things like endocrine disruptors that can't be good for human health. And so when people hear, damn, I don't want that plastic in my food, I don't want it in my water. And by the way, you go out and catch a fish in the ocean or in the river, it's going to have plastic in it now, just the microplastic incorporated into its flesh. And then there's another aspect that people are generally not familiar with, which is plastics being made from natural gas. Natural gas is primarily methane. Methane leaking from pipes and methane leaking from where it's produced in fracking fields is a major contributor to climate chaos and warming the planet. And so making that plastic is causing a lot of trouble. Now, I can tell you back in Oregon, it's not that hard to talk about this because we were the first state to have a bottle bill. We're very proud of that. It really cleaned up the plastic bottles and the aluminum cans and so on and so forth. So it's been part of our heritage to try to create that cycle, that circular cycle of recycling. But truly with plastic, when you see that blue bin and you throw a plastic bottle in, that's not recycling, that's wish cycling. You're hoping that that's going to be recycled, right, but the odds are it's not. Very little plastic you put into a blue recycling bin gets recycled. It used to get shipped off to China. Now, basically, it gets thrown into landfills. So we hear that mantra in our head about, recycle, reduce, reuse, the 3 R's. We're going to save the planet with the 3 R's. With plastics, it's burned, buried, or it's borne out to sea, and all three are bad.
That credit card you just held up, luckily I don't think I could see the number through the video, Senator. But
I know that's like holding it with the wrong side, so I wouldn't have that problem.
But the point is, it's going to live longer than us. That credit card will be there when our bodies are gone. I mean, it's really important for people to realize how long this stuff stays around. Now, you were, of course, a state congressman. I think my notes say you were the Speaker of the House, as a matter of fact, in Oregon at one point.
In Oregon, yes.
Why do we need federal legislation versus state by state to break free from plastic?
Well, the challenge is national, and there's a national lobby that really zooms in to try to stop any state from making progress. Some states, you have things that work. Well, let's borrow their ideas. Let's take the ideas that work that they've piloted, if you will. For example, extended producer responsibility, where a producer has to take responsibility for the plastic that's in their packaging or in their products. And some of the producers going, well, do I really need to put this plastic part into my product? Do I really need to put plastic packaging in when I could do it with a cardboard, etc.? So that's one key piece. Another is to really have truth in recycling. There's a lot of products that have a little triangle on them, or they say recyclable or something, and the fact is, no, not really. It's just like there aren't meaningful standards, and there's not enforced standards. I had this, I was traveling, and there was a paper plate in the hotel, and it had recyclable, and it also said like made from recycled goods or something like that. It had two statements. And then I saw all this little tiny statements below it printed on the plate. I'm like, what's this? And so I get out my phone, I take a picture, and I blow it out because it's so tiny I can't read what it's saying. And it basically said, well, not really.
No,
it's not really made from recycled fibers. And by the way, it's not really recyclable either if you put food on this plate, because you can't recycle it if it has food on it. And it's like in the small print. And I'm like, this is like, okay, well, that's
that seems like it should. That seems like it should have made your Instagram page. I got to see that. I've never heard of that. That's nuts. Well, see,
I think you could do a whole comic routine on that.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I have a whole routine about just the idea of how convenience is so important to us that we use a plastic bag for like 10 feet.
Yeah.
We walk 10 feet with an item in our bag. We get in our car, take it out, and then devour it or use it, whatever it is.
Plastic bags, they're a nightmare.
Yep.
I walk out of the grocery store sometimes, and because I forget to take bags with me, and I have like the products stacked up from my hand all the way in my arm. And they're like, really? You're going to walk like 3 blocks to your car, carrying like 2
I love to hear
boxes?
I love to hear it. I'm the same way. And sometimes I did this yesterday. I do take a plastic bag. I had a bunch of food, and I walk it back in, and they look at me like I'm an absolute sociopath, but I don't care. I can't, I don't need it. I want to return it, and I got my steps in. But the big
and when you return it, they take it, and then as soon as you walk away, they throw the
trash. They toss it. They're like, "This is yes." Well, I do look like an unsavory fella. I understand. But the real challenge here is money, and you know all about this, and you talk all about this. There is a lobby. You just touched on it. A plastics lobby. It's really the oil lobby, the natural gas lobby. You mentioned they come in when states try to, or local municipalities try to change these laws. They come in with their high-powered lobbyists and change it. But how do we fight this? This gets into the conversation about campaign finance. It gets into the conversation about filibuster reform, for which you have been an absolute champion for. So when we're talking about plastic, we have to talk about the special interests and what influence they have in campaign donations. How do you want to take this one?
Well, the fossil fuel industry really is the most powerful lobby in America. And for people to understand how that came to be, in 2014, they decided that they were going to take advantage of the Citizens United Supreme Court decision and put hundreds of millions of dollars into Senate races. And it worked. 6 Senate seats went from blue to red with this third-party attack ads. And, just like the airways were inundated with these attack ads. And so they put Mitch McConnell in power. And because they put him in power, they have been the force that says, hey, jump, and Mitch McConnell says, how high? I mean, and so it has silenced all the Republicans who used to be environmentalists, who used to talk about climate. Their lips are zipped, or they whisper it like, Jeff, I'm really kind of with you on this. I want to help on this, but I can't have a public vote on my record against the fossil fuel industry. So, hey, can we arrange this so that it's a yes/no vote? And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, voice vote, okay, let's do that. And but it tells you how powerful they are. That grown men and women who are at the peak of their political careers in the U.S. Senate have to speak in little soft tones, like they're, like the CIA is after them or something, or, on things involving fossil fuels, and plastics are fossil fuels. It's a huge, huge problem. So we have to take on Citizens United, and that means we can't overturn it. We're not going to get a constitutional amendment to overturn it, but at least we can create disclosure. Once you have disclosure, you can go on the attack. I had the situation with my 2014 campaign, that same year when so many other people lost, is the Koch brothers were bragging about coming after me in Oregon. And I decided, I put up a campaign ad, and I said, out-of-state oil and coal billionaires come to Oregon, like my opponent. They share an agenda. Here it is. It's awful. They think it's it's wonderful for them. It's terrible for us. That was my ad. And you know what? They shut down their operation and left my state. They did not want to be called out in that fashion. My team was terrified to call them out because they said, Jeff, this is going to backfire. Instead of putting $5 million in, which is what our estimate was at that point, they may put $50 million into your race. So you may not, they'll be everywhere, and they'll to make a lesson out of you. And nobody else put up ads against them for that reason. Maybe I got lucky. They were so shocked and surprised they didn't have time to figure out what's going on and said, well, let's retreat and figure it out. But we have to take them on directly about what they're doing. Our planet is burning up, and we have no time to spare. And right now we've got a conversation going on in this building as you and I are speaking about climate measures, and the fossil fuel industry is trying to get subsidies for coal and natural gas into this bill that's supposed to be fighting climate change.
So how do you give me and listeners hope, your constituents hope, because last week they cut out the climate stuff, some of it, from Build Back Better. Today I just heard paid family leave apparently is out. What's your relationship like with Senators Sinema or Manchin? How do you get them to come around on this? It seems like there's really nothing, any pressure point that could be used.
Listen, when it's a 50-50 Senate and someone has a state that has different views, the state of West Virginia is very different than the state of Oregon. The state of West Virginia is the reddest state in the sense that they had a 40% spread in favor of Trump, the highest in the nation. So you're going to, and their whole kind of cultural legacy, economy, small towns, it's all built on coal. So they're going to have a different viewpoint. But how can we help those families and those communities transition? Because natural gas is taking them out, and it's taking out the coal, not renewables. How can we help those communities transition and build a bridge that works for families in West Virginia and works for families in Oregon? That's what we're trying to do, to find that intersection. We're not going to get nearly a bill that's strong enough. And I'm really worried about the fossil fuel industry inserting stuff in that really hurts climate. So I'm fighting that right now. But we're going to have to elect more climate champions to the Senate so that we don't have a 50-50 split.
I really appreciate you joining me. I know you have been also a real vociferous champion in defense of voting rights. All of the stuff that we just talked about, pretty much every issue, including campaign finance, doesn't matter if we don't uphold the legislation, the pinnacle of Dr. Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement's work. The Voting Rights Act needs to be restored. What, if anything, can you tell me about that at the end?
You're absolutely right. I just got a note that the vote is closing, so I have to run upstairs. Can I come back and rejoin your show?
Please do. Thank you so much for your time. And so there you go. Then his communications folks emailed me and said he's coming right back. So I said, all right, let me run back out to the shed because I really wanted to get his answer on voting rights, and it was a great one. And so we continue with Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon.
Okay, I think I got the votes voted, and I've got the volume turned back on.
Awesome.
Hearing me okay?
Yeah, you have me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So I appreciate you coming back for this. I really do. It means a lot. This is such an important issue, and I think sometimes history matters. That's why I mentioned the civil rights movement and the work of Dr. King. But more recently, during the Bush administration, the entire United States Senate, all the Republicans voted to confirm the Voting Rights Act. It's the Supreme Court gutted it, and then it's been damaged further. And then we saw all of these states take action to restrict voting, to make voting harder. This is the most important thing. You've been very outspoken. What do you want to say about it? What can be done?
Yeah, we have three powerful forces corrupting our voting system, and one is gerrymandering.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to hear my colleagues kind of salivating over gerrymandering on steroids with the redistricting that's going on right now. They figure they have a 15-seat advantage in the House due to gerrymandering. That is the Republicans over the Democrats. And they could amp that up to 25. And so if you believe in equal representation, gerrymandering is a huge poison in the system because it steals the right to equal representation.
Yep.
And the second big challenge we have is dark money with which billionaires buy elections. That's what the fossil fuel billionaires did in 2014 that I was talking about earlier. And so when you see those incredible amounts of attack ads coming from groups with really nice names like, I don't know, Generation Opportunity or, American Apple Pie, and they're running vicious attack ads, that's dark money, and
right.
And it works, but it works through disinformation campaigns essentially, and it takes away the ability to have a debate over real issues and therefore a legitimate electoral process. And then the most diabolical of all are new strategies to block the ballot box. I recently posed the question to a panel in a hearing of why did former President Trump hate vote by mail? And so it's interesting to consider. Why did he latch onto that? I mean, vote by mail is more secure than any other form of voting. You have to put your signature on the back of the envelope. They compare it to your signature on file. And there's no way for election day manipulation. And by that, I mean, there's all these tried and true tactics to keep groups from voting on election day. You change the location of the voting booths, different address this year. You put out false information about where they're located. You put out false information saying, we hope you come next week when the election is actually this week, so people actually miss the election. You understaff it, so people are in a really long line. You put the voting location where there's no parking, so that people are like, oh my goodness, how am I possibly going to get in to vote when I use a walker or have a hip problem or so forth. Those are true forms of stealing votes from Americans. And it's a tried and true practice, but it only works on election day. So therefore, vote by mail, in which people don't have to go to a voting booth and have several weeks to return the ballot, is the antidote. And Trump didn't like the antidote because he wants to be able to manipulate the election on election day using all these horrific strategies. They're kind of, you think about some of the strategies of old, where people say, oh, you want to register to vote? You know, recite some clause of the Constitution and write an essay on it. And they say, sorry, you failed. Or, you know, something like saying, oh, we've got a jar full of marbles. How many marbles are in this jar? Or we even have in history situations where white men on horses would all form a barricade of the actual box to drop your ballot into, so that you, as a Black American or Hispanic American, couldn't physically get to the box in order to drop your ballot. These are modern forms of that. So the For the People Act, which I led in the Senate, we worked through the summer to get 50 of us onto it. We had 49 sponsors. Now we have 50 sponsors. And we really, really tried to take on all three of these issues and this new set of election subversion issues. Things where, like, a state legislature can take over a local election board, or one person can go to a voting location and invalidate or challenge and make a nightmare out of 1,000 people who come there to vote. So the bill got, in a way, stronger with this addition, and now it's called Freedom to Vote. And Senator Manchin has been working to get Republicans on board, and they all said no. They all said no. Why? I mean, across America, members of the Republican Party often support these reforms. They don't like gerrymandering. They know it's corrupt. They don't like dark money. They don't think billionaires should buy elections. But in the Senate, these things are considered a key to Republican senators winning their elections. And so they all said no. And then when it came to John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is the replication of the 1965, which is pre-clearance. It means if you're going to change your voting rules, they have to be inspected first to see if they're being done in a prejudicial fashion to stop particular groups from voting. And that pre-clearance worked so well. And like you noted, everybody on both sides of the aisle supported it. And now not a single senator will support pre-clearance. Not one Republican senator will support it. And so it's just evidence of the deep corruption of my Republican colleagues on the issue of integrity in voting.
But to tie it all together, the U.S. Senate, you have the votes. Both bills have passed out of the House. You have 50 votes in the Senate to pass this, right? But it's the filibuster?
50 plus a vice president will pass it.
And so is there any chance that you've heard from talking to folks in the administration, the president, much less anybody in the Senate, your colleagues in the Senate, that you could get around this somehow by getting rid of the filibuster, at least with the voting rights? It's so consequential, as you know.
When you say filibuster, people think, oh, well, so Republicans are standing up on the floor and giving speeches in order to delay the vote, and we just have to wait them out. No, that's not the way it works. Since 1975, you have to have 60 votes to close debate. So those who want to essentially continue debate, that is, obstruct getting to a final vote, they don't even have to vote at all. You can be 59-0 and you still lose. The 59 would lose because you have to have 60 votes. And that was a quirk, an accidental shift when the Senate went from 2/3 to closed debate to 3/5. But they said, but instead of those present voting, we'll make it out of the body. And I don't expect people to get their hands around this easily because it's really confusing. But what it amounts to is the filibuster became a no-show, no-effort obstruction. Combine that with Mitch McConnell's strategy of obstruct and delay and the partisan warfare conducted through separate cable channels, and you have the perfect formula for paralysis. It's often said that President Washington said about the Senate that it should be a cooling saucer. Apparently, it's apocryphal. But the idea was your tea in the saucer should cool before you drink it so you don't burn your mouth, right? But the Senate today is not a cooling saucer. It's not a kind of more deliberative version of the House. It is a deep freeze where the minority can paralyze the place. They have a veto over policy. Now, the Republicans changed the rules on their priorities so that it's not a two-way street. This doesn't affect both sides equally. They got rid of the filibuster on tax cuts for the rich because that was their priority. They got rid of the filibuster in order to be able to do Supreme Court justices by simple majority. They got rid of the filibuster so that they could, or change the rules by simple majority so that they could proceed to accelerate the packing of the lower court with Federalist Society members who are basically about corporations taking over America, could do that with 2 hours of debate instead of 30 hours of debate, so 15-time acceleration. So the Republicans said, no, we want our cake and eat it too. When we're in the majority, we can get things done because our priorities are simple majority. And when the minority, we can veto the Democratic agenda for the people. That imbalance is destroying our country. And so we have to overcome it. And when I first started talking about this, I came here in 2009. In 2011, I put up a public filibuster or talking filibuster saying, no, get rid of this no-show, no-effort obstruction. Every Democrat who's here today in the Senate, who was here in 2011, voted for my rule change. So that was 10 years ago. Since then, I've spent so much time cultivating the conversation about how the Senate worked as a deliberative body. I mean, there's a reason it was called the greatest deliberative body in the world, but no longer. Now it is like the worst legislative body in the world. It can't address the issues facing America. So we've got to modify the filibuster. We don't have to get rid of it. There is value in the majority not being run over the top of the minority. The minority can slow things down to get amendment opportunities, to get compromise, to make sure the press has seen the bill, to make sure the members have seen what's in the bill, to make sure the people of America have seen what's in the bill. That's important. But slowing things down is one thing. Vetoing things from being able to hold a vote, that is deep, profound corruption for the powerful over the people, and it has to end.
Do you think it can get done, voting rights?
We have a shot at it. We have a shot at it. Like I said, every Democrat voted for a public filibuster. If Democrats have to, everyone who was here in 2011, if it's a public filibuster and we apply the rules of the Senate, which say you can only speak twice to an issue, you can speak for a long, long time, but you can only speak twice, we have a shot of being able to get voting rights passed.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I do sleep better knowing that you are in the United States Senate. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me because I know that you're super smart and care deeply about these issues and that you're the real deal. I hope we can do it again. Thank you so much, Senator.
Pleasure. And I know you're not sleeping well because you know how much is hanging in the balance and how precarious the effort is to win. But if you're not on the battlefield, you can't win. We're on the battlefild. We're going to keep fighting. And hopefully we catch that magic combination. And I can come back on your show when we've passed the Freedom to Vote Act.
I noticed on your Instagram, when you were a young man, you used to have a mustache. I'd like to tease you here at the end. Is there any chance of that reappearing to bring back the mustache, Senator? Have you thought about that?
I'll ask my wife, but I know in advance that that's an absolute no.
Okay.
You don't have any pictures of when I had a long beard?
Oh, no, I haven't seen those. There's some old pictures of you looking like a wizard somewhere?
Been carefully eliminating those pictures.
thank you so much for talking to me. Keep up the great work. I really appreciate it.
Take care now.
There you go, Senator Jeff Merkley. Send Jeff Merkley on Twitter. Go tell him that you heard him right here. That would be a big deal. That's how we get these great guests, because they know there's folks out there listening. There's not a lot of metrics and feedback for them to see, but that matters on social media. So go do that now. Send Jeff Merkley on Twitter, and, of course, Aaron E. Carroll on Twitter. Always great to have Aaron on. Thank you so much for your support. I hope to see some of you or many of you tonight at our virtual happy hour, the Stand Up with Pete Community Happy Hour Hangout. That's 8 East. If you are a member, a subscriber, you'll get an email every day with a picture of vitamin N, and you can send those over to me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Little nature photo that comes every morning along with the show, delivered right to your email box. Links and everything else that you need. And it also tells you when each interview segment starts as well. If you ever want to skip ahead, if you like one guest or another guest or just the news, whatever you want, there's 3 things that I'm trying to deliver for you each and every day here on the news, except for Friday when I just do the 2 guest interviews, generally speaking. Okay, that's it. Take us away, John Carroll. Take us away. I am tired. Time to go to beddy bye for me. Hope you enjoy the show. See you tonight. Bye-bye.
Tyrants taunt you in the sirens teach you better stand up. Stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge. Let the weak flee. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think your driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.